Hello, everybody. It's Dina at the Realize Foundation. And today I'm here with one of our Scars to Stars authors in book four. And I want to welcome Ken Miller. And Ken, I would love for you to introduce yourself to everyone.
My name is Ken Miller, and I live in Bellingham, Washington, and I'll be in Scars to Stars, Volume 4. It's a joy to be in there, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was saying before we got on here, I read a post that you wrote recently on your business page, and it was about how you've volunteered a lot of your time and money over the years, from what I understand, to a lot of different causes and to people in general. And you were writing about saying no to volunteering for a while or getting off boards and things like that. And I would love, all of us have so many commitments in our life and so many things that we have to do on a daily basis. And for our own mental health, we have to learn how to say no. And I think it would be awesome to hear your take on why you made that decision or how or what prompted it.
So the decision was to cut back on my volunteer outside activities. On July 22nd, I had 52 outside volunteer commitments. And with council, I sat down, looked at all the commitments, 23 different organizations or 23 different organizations, committees, subcommittees, task forces, affinity groups, and boards that I was on. And then I had 29 gentlemen that I was either mentoring or sponsoring. And I looked at the whole list and I submitted my resignation from all 23 of the organizations. And I let go of 21 of the individuals that I was mentoring or sponsoring with, again, not even their permission, but I just was very nice about it. I was very upfront about it. And I explained my why. And my why is I made a commitment to speak from the stages across the country. And to do that, I need the resources of time and money so that I can successfully do that. I believe I have a message that I want to share with the world, and I believe I can deliver it well. And so for me, I couldn't absorb that time that's being spent on volunteer commitments, and I want to allocate that towards speaking nationally.
That's awesome. It's a great realization when we can assess that for ourselves and then really find what is that purpose, whether it's always been the purpose and we're just now discovering it, or whether we've known it for a while, and finding that purpose of how we can help more people. And sometimes what we're doing is helping people, but it's not reaching the larger audience that we could. And you have such a powerful story in so many ways that I can't wait to see what comes of all of that.
Let me add one more thing to this. The problem wasn't the commitments. That really wasn't the problem. The problem was my inability to say no when asked. And I really had to look at that. Why do I always say yes? Even if I don't have the time, I move something else around or I'll move some money around so I can make this donation. And when I looked at it's a self esteem issue. It's a belief that if I say no to someone, they're not going to like me or not want to interact with me because I've said no. And remember, we can really do three things. We can say yes, we can say no, or we can say not now. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what I've really made the decision is a not now for 1 year. And in a year's time, August 1, I'll take a look at it again and make a decision to maybe volunteer. But until then, I also track how many people have asked me since then for my time or commitments. And I've had 13 since then, some small, some larger, but I've said not now to 13 of those. And I can look at myself and, in a way, it was honoring my time and honoring my commitment to family, commitment to my vision, and my commitment to myself. And I'm doing that today.
That's great. I think it's a really good point is um, it's ironic that you framed it that way, because I actually wrote a chapter for this book and it's called Addicted to Approval. And it's all about that, you know, not wanting to say no to people and wanting their approval, and putting my self-worth based on other people's approval. And it's been my whole life. I mean, it's, and I was actually trying to write about something totally different, and it just came to me. It's like, this is what I'm supposed to write about in this book. So it's a very prevalent thing for people in general, but especially people that have businesses, because we need that approval from our clients or our employees or whatever it is that, we want them to be happy with us, and we want them to want to work with us, or, those things. And it's true. It's like sometimes we devise our own worth on what other people think, and we have to be able to say no, like you're saying, or not now, and really devising that value of ourself for ourselves, and not necessarily always needing that outside approval.
Well, it comes back down to self-esteem. Self-esteem is self-estimation of either worth or competency, really. Self-love and self-competency, that's self-esteem in itself. I speak on this often. It's one of my favorite subjects. But when we use a thing called pseudo, which means false, self-esteem, we're looking for externalities to give us worth. If you say I'm all right, I must be all right. If the world says, or if this committee says, or this board says, or this individual says that I'm competent, that I'm worthy, that I am a value added to whatever this organization does, then I must be all right. Because my estimation is that I am not all right, and I'm not worthy of this love or this sense of accomplishment. But in truth, I am. I'm just a child of God, and I am worthy of whatever I've done that makes me feel that I bring worth or value to this world. And so, again, it was a very interesting, there was a catalyst, which I'm not going to go into, but there was something that triggered this, as usually is. And what that trigger did, it allowed me the time and then the effort to look at all the different commitments. And I had commitments 600 to 700 hours a year just doing volunteer work. And so I've let go of all that except for 8 men that I'm still mentoring. And I'm just looking forward to what this year will bring apart, because this is going on 15 years I've been doing this.
That's amazing. And I'm sure that there are so many people who have gotten self-worth and self-esteem from working with you, and from you mentoring them. And I know you do a lot with nonprofits. So I'm just really glad that I got to meet you and learn all the things that you've done. And I think we should talk a little bit about your story in the book. Mm-hmm. So you want to share a little bit about, what's your chapter about in Stars 4?
My chapter is about a very specific date. At least that's what Leads begins in. It's a very specific date, September 22nd, 2004. I was a street-level drug addict and alcoholic and criminal. And I was arrested for what I hope was the last time. And it's the story of where I was at that point, and then what I did to get to a point where I had at least a modicum of self-esteem, but it allowed me to grow into the man that I am today. I am a kind and gentle person today. I wasn't before. And it's about that date and about that journey to become the man I am today.
It's a very powerful story. I know people will get a lot out of it. And the ironic thing is, this book comes out exactly 20 years to the day of that day you wrote about. So it'll be on September 22nd, 2024. Wow. So wow. I was reading your story, and I read the date, and I got chills, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's exactly 20 years.
And it'll be, that's incredible. I didn't know that either. Thank you for sharing.
Sure. So my other question for you is how has this process been for you? And I do want to say thank you because you have also sponsored another author in our book, which gives them a chance to write. So I really appreciate that you did that. Um, but just, kind of what your perception is of this project, from the time you learned about it to now having submitted your chapter and we're getting ready to release this book. What is it? Has that been like for you?
It's been great. I was first approached by a mutual friend of ours, and I said, yeah, I'd be interested in it. And that at the time, I believe we were talking about, suicide survivors, people who have attempted suicide, and I was one of them, and gave me an opportunity to look at a specific point in time. And it's one thing is about the events, but what are the feelings around it? What are the consequences of the actions we have taken to get to this point? And then more importantly, it gave me an opportunity to, again, go into depth on the recovery. But that's what I wrote about. The process was great because I got to meet with, I call it a cohort, but a group of other men and women who have a commonality that we have, and to listen to them, to see where they're at. I was very interested in looking at, I'm a successful businessman. That's me. I run a business, I own a company. That's great. But there are people from all different backgrounds and different experiences and at a different point in their journey. I'm not saying that I'm well or I'm better than any way, shape, or form. I have some accoutrements of success, but listening to people who have overcome what they have overcome, they're successful in my eyes. And I had an opportunity, to support some people and to say, hey, appreciate your story. I appreciate being a part of this group with you. We will always be together in this book. And, to be able to support them on the calls that we would have regularly. I was pretty consistent on showing up. And, it was just a great process. And then also the writing process. It's one thing to put it down in draft form, and I usually stay in draft form, but then to go back and modify and clean up and, try to fit within the parameters that you've set for different reasons. I think that's also, it's humbling. There's some humility involved with that, but it was a beautiful process. And I was, again, glad that I was an opportunity for me to share.
Yeah, it has. It's turned into I don't know, it's become a life of its own. We started with some virtual summits with people telling their stories, and now we're on book 4 all of a sudden. So it's been an incredible journey, and people that have been in the books and that I've met through this that I would have probably never met otherwise in my life. It's just been such a blessing in so many ways. It is true. We have a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, different ages, different cultures, different countries, even, and telling their stories. And I think part of it is that, you know, we all have this story, and people are like, "Oh, you're so brave that you would write something so personal." But I think it's so healing for most of the people who write their story, and it helps them process things that maybe they haven't processed before. Like, since what you wrote about was 20 years ago, so you probably have had that processing time. But some of our authors are writing things that are more recent that they haven't really processed. And so I think it's a supportive community way of doing something that's scary and hard, but doing it in a community of people who are caring and supportive and, you know, want to help each other through this. So it's been a huge healing journey for me, even, going through all of this. And I realized today when I looked at the date that it was 6 years ago today that my friend died who made me start all of this. So I was just thinking about him this morning and how if I could have just had a conversation with him, if it would have mattered. And that's what put me on this whole path. So it's that community and that sharing stories and that knowing that you're not alone that hopefully will keep people alive and finding the help they need.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the also great things about it is that it wasn't easy. And many of the best things in life aren't easy. It was more words than I thought it was going to be, or more characters. And so when I started writing, it was a little shallow. So I had to take time to dig deep to flesh out the experience. The other thing is, as we're not, I hate to use the word victims, but as individuals that have had an adverse condition or an experience, many times we're stuck in the experience. And so I've talked about the experience 100 times, the negative adverse experience. I know that story like the back of my hand, but I don't speak a lot about the getting well part. And it was really nice to be able to write down, when I went to drug treatment and some of the things I learned there, some of the experiences there as I grew coming off of this adverse experience. And so I think that was really good for me. And then just the sense that I did it. I physically did it, the writing, got it in, had it edited, accepted the edits, and then moved, obviously moved on to this point. There's a sense of, again, we talk about self-esteem, do esteemable things. And one of the esteemable things is things you do that are positive to your well-being. And this was positive to my well-being, and I did the work because there's work involved. It wasn't easy. It wasn't meant to be easy. And I'm fine with that. I went in that room, I looked at it, wrote down what I saw, came out, edited a little bit, and I'm very good with what was in that room and very good with the experience itself. Thank you.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think too there was something I read in your story about when the day you got arrested and you said, I know how to survive in jail because when you're on the street, everything is so unpredictable. And I'm guessing when you were in jail, it was more regimented, routine kind of thing. I don't know. I'm asking, but I'm wondering the difference. It seemed to me when I read the story that you were relieved and that was going to give you something you needed to get better. And so can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, but I may have to correct you on something.
Okay, yeah.
The streets are not unpredictable. They're not. Being an addict, a street level addict, is the same thing day in, day out. Wash, rinse, repeat. I wake up, I look for a 40 ounce of beer, get my first 40 ounce, usually panhandling or barring or whatever, 93 cents, get the 40 ounce. I start drinking, and then I start searching for any way or method that I can get enough money to buy crack cocaine and then smoke it. I was thinking the other day, just a week or two ago, about my addiction. And I can only remember, like, I was addicted for 17 years on the streets, penitentiary, jails, missions. And I can only think of 10 different days. We remember because we got arrested. We remember because this person got killed. We remember because of this happened to me. But there's so few because every day was the same. Wake up, look for drugs and go to the soup kitchen, and then try to find some shelter, excuse me, or find a motel to live in. So those days, my days are much more unpredictable now because I'm interacting with people. I'm interacting with family, I'm interacting with clients, I'm interacting with you. So my days are much more unpredictable now, which is great because I'm competent to deal with those days. But talking to being, I remember when I got arrested. I've been arrested probably 20, 30 times, but this is a felony arrest. I know that. It's sales of a controlled substance. I sold a rock of crack cocaine, $10 rock. And I knew I was going to prison, but I was so relieved. That's a great word. I was so relieved. I was crying because I knew I could survive the penitentiary. I've been there twice before. I'm going to the same penitentiary, same guys. I play pinochle, play basketball, do my little work on the yard, and I'll do my time and come home. But will I come home a different person? That is a question that I could struggle with. But I was just relieved because as an addict, I couldn't live. I was dying. I talk about that in the story. I was dying. And the only thing that was needed to be extinguished was hope. And once hope gets extinguished, then I put myself into situations where I would probably be killed. And I was in situations like that. Or I would put myself into situations emotionally where suicide became a viable alternative. So I had attempted that also.
So, what can I ask? What started your addiction? Like, how did that start?
What started? Birth. I'm an alcoholic. It had nothing to do with how my mom treated me or my dad treated me or the situations that happened in high school or college or adoption or beatings. I'm an alcoholic. I can't not drink without drinking to excess. And under the excessive amount of alcohol, I make really bad decisions. I mean, really bad decisions for my loved ones, for myself, and for society. So I was born an alcoholic. So you just trigger it by starting to drink. And within probably a month of my first drink, I was a full blown alcoholic. I couldn't control the amount I drank, even though I would want to. Within 1 month, my first drink. And then I got introduced to crack cocaine, and I was an addict the first day. I kept smoking it until I could get it to work, and I got it to work. And for the next 17 years, I chased that for a long time. So,
Well, I'm glad that you're here to share your story and that you're a completely different person now, from what I understand. And
let me say something to that.
yeah, sure.
That's a good one. And I interrupt because I just think, and I'm just who I am. I was always a nice person, always a nice person. And even on the streets, I was a nice person. But I did some really horrific things that hurt people. And but those were incidents underneath it. Because then, I would do these things, and some people can do criminal behavior and have no guilt, no shame whatsoever. Okay, I'm not that person. So when my suicide attempt was because I burglarized and robbed my mom. I burglarized her house. And I thought that was such an affront and such a disrespect to her, being my mother who raised me, that, I couldn't deal with that emotionally. And so therefore, I tried to kill myself with pills. So what I'm trying to say here on this in particular is that I believe you have an underlying personality, and we just need to let it manifest and let that come out. And we can do that by doing God's will, however you define that. But it was always there. It's just the drugs and alcohol would overcome those, and it would do it today. If I was to start drinking or drugging today, I would engage in the same behavior that I did, even though I'm a nice person today.
I agree. I've had some struggles with alcohol too. And I think, growing up in New Orleans where you could reach the counter, you could buy whatever you wanted. And also just being in the restaurant and hospitality industry for so many years, it's just normal. People expect when you get off, you're going to have a drink, and that's kind of how it started for me. And I never thought I had a problem until my suicide attempt. And I woke up in the hospital and my blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit. And, I still didn't think I had an alcohol problem until many years later. But it's something that can creep up on you. And it can start, I've never really done drugs, but I think no matter what the substance is, it can start as a social thing and turn into something more serious, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my experience and my truth, what my beliefs are, and it's not everyone's belief. Some people are more into the antecedents. What are the reasons why? What were the circumstances that made taking a chemical that modifies your behavior and your thinking? why did that become viable? And a lot of people say it's because of this pain or this experience. That I don't agree with that. That's just me. And it was important for me not to believe that, because this is the problem when you have that belief. This is just my opinion. The problem with that is that you believe if I clean up everything, if I clean up all these circumstances, environmental cues, that make me drink to excess, then I can drink successfully. And if you're an alcoholic like I am, it doesn't matter what's happening outside of me. It doesn't matter. Good, bad, or indifferent. I will drink to excess. My thing is, once I have that first drink, I don't care anymore. Okay. I call it the efforts. I don't care anymore. And I will continue drinking, and then, I'll get drunk. And then again, I make really bad decisions. So it was important for me, because when I first got cleaned up, I got cleaned up into 13 inpatient treatment centers, 14 inpatient treatment centers. And every time I went in there thinking, man, if I can just clean up all this childhood trauma, if I clean up this shame-based behavior, if I clean up X, Y, Z, then I can drink without pain on the back end. And I cannot drink without pain. And that's the word, pain on the back end.
That's a really good observation, because, there's somebody who wrote in our first book who was an alcoholic and went to rehab and had a good rehab experience, and then relapsed, and then went into a second treatment center that was a horrific experience. And now she has been sober for over a year, and started a new business. Is doing really great. And if anybody wants to know who that is, it's Liv Sane, and she wrote in volume 1. But she wrote a book. She lost her dad when she was 23, I think, and kind of snowballed for her. I guess the grief from that, and she lost some other family members around the same time. So, but yeah, I think I think there are influences in our life that do influence things that we do, but like you said, it's not something that you can't really say I'm an alcoholic because I was abused in this way, because I do believe if we have addictive tendencies, we have those either way. That's just I think it could be energy drinks or coffee or alcohol or crack. I mean, it's all addiction depending on how you look at it. I mean, I like Red Bulls. They're not good for me. I mean, there's things like that where it's like, do I really need to drink that? No, it's bad for me, but I want it. So it's a similar thing, but it's not. Society doesn't look at it the same as alcohol or drugs.
No, because most people don't rob banks or kidnap or whatever for Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that we do in pursuit of our drug of choice. I'm talking about drugs, hard drugs, or even alcohol. I did things for alcohol that were, again, shame-based, and I at that time felt really bad that I did this or that on the streets. And now, I'm an opinion. This is one thing for many people, and I've been around recovery for 40 years, been clean now. It'll be 20 years on September 23rd. It's always the day after your last use. And the question I say to people, I don't care why you're an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic because you is. I don't care why. If you want to believe it's because you got beat when you were 14, cool. I'm cool with that. If you want to do it because your wife divorced you, cool. I'm cool with that. But now the question is, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to grow and not have, the only thing I can guarantee you is that you won't have the problems connected with active alcoholism or drug addiction. That if you remain clean and sober, those you won't have. You'll still have bad days. People still will die on you. You will still have financial problems, probably, some insecurity, we'll call it financial insecurity. But the problems, you won't have a hangover. I guarantee that if you remain, abstinent. So, again, I remember this old story. This guy I was listening to a tape, and he said, I don't answer why questions. And I don't. I answer how questions. How do I stay sober? Yeah, I can help you on that. How do I increase my self-esteem? Yeah, I can help you on that. I can give you some direction. I can give you some things that have worked for me. I can send you to certain books. I can introduce you to certain people. Yeah, I can do that. But the whys, I can't answer why questions. It just is what it is.
That's a really good point and a great one to end on.
Oh, this is too much fun.
Yeah. Well, Ken, it's so great to have you. And if anybody wants to connect with Ken, you can find him on LinkedIn at Ken Miller 84, and connect with him and see how you can. I don't know if you need a volunteer. Might not be the right person right now, but if you want to connect with him, reach out and say hi. And we hope you will read his story in Volume 4. Thanks
Yes.
for being here, Ken.
Thank you.